All right, welcome back to another episode of Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics. My name is Troy, aka Keep Troy Blue. With me, as always, is Cathy Cannon, aka Cannon's Fodder. We're gonna be talking a little presidential swap potentially. Maybe we're gonna make I'm gonna make as many swap jokes, swinger
We know,
Democratic
Troy. We
Party
know.
swinger swap jokes as possible. Kathy's gonna judge me for those jokes.
I already
Uh,
have a headache, for those wondering.
A couple of major stories. So Biden that we're going to cover today, Biden's complete disasters debate and should he step down, and the SCOTUS ruling granting Trump immunity for official acts, partial immunity for presidents. Kathy, how are you? It's almost 4th of July. It is almost Happy Traders Day and also UK elections. UK elections are tomorrow. How you feeling? What do you have you been following? So much shit has been going on here. I haven't really been following the UK stuff. I know that the Tories are fucked, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think this 4th of July, I think I saw it on Twitter. I can't even steal this joke. Is like Florida or America's going out of business sale. Like end of year
Kind of
school
feels that way.
party. Yeah. It is remarkable for this all to be happening at this time when we celebrate this thing. The irony should somewhere in hell, right? The founding fathers, the signers of the Declaration, the Constitutional Convention, all of them are beating Alexander Hamilton to a pulp with a copy of Federalist 78 in hand, right? Just be like, you motherfucker said lifetime appointments would be fine.
Yeah.
But that is just a preview for later, kids.
Fucking A-ham. Yeah, so stick around. That is a preview for the second half of the show. We're going to be doing a deep dive on surrounding sort of this immunity, the history of presidential immunity, talking a little founders, Federalist Papers, also Nixon, and sort of Nixon on in terms of how this decision has been shaped by the Supreme Court. So yeah, the debate
is legal now. If he does it now, totally fine. The Saturday Night
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked
above board.
We've talked about this before. Like in the Nixon Frost interview, Nixon said when a president does it, it's not illegal. And at the time, that was so fucking shocking to people that basically like was the final nail in the coffin of Nixon's legacy. Sort of made him an irredeemable figure. And now it's law. Now he was right. He predicted it, and he was right. When the president does it, it is not illegal.
Predict it. He wanted it, and his cronies spent 50 fucking years making sure it would happen.
Yep. Fucking Roger Stone and all those guys that started with Nixon heard that and took it as a rallying cry and ended up with Donald Trump. And now it's, now we're looking at that very same fucking line. The irony of history is absolutely astounding on that.
To translate it for the kids, basically, they looked at the Watergate ruling and said, bet.
Oh, God. We need another Gen Z translator.
Yeah.
I saw that. That was like now the Gen Alphas are old enough.
Here, what I'll tell you is Skibbity, Ohio means absolutely nothing. It means Baba Boo Boo. It's essentially what they're saying. It is utter nonsense. It means nothing.
Now you're just being Delulu.
No, that actually means something.
With your Riz.
Riz means something, but Skibbity, Ohio means nothing.
Oh, God, we're old. Anyway.
We are. Very old.
So we're going to cover the immunity in a bit. First of all, the debate. Okay. We both watched the debate. We had to. I had to for my job. We had to for the show.
It hurt.
It was pretty bad. So I think we were texting during the debate. I'm not going to play any of it because it was
actually, I was texting and you were watching in horror was the vibe I get, because I would send like 6 messages and you would go, this is bad. And I would send like 12 more messages and you'd be like, yeah.
It was about as bad as you could possibly get. Well, first of all, Trump wasn't great either. Trump was fucking terrible. And he lied about every single time he spoke. He told at least one lie. I actually cataloged it. It was
that must have been a job.
The DNC cataloged it, but it was over 50 lies. It was over one lie a minute if he had actually 45 minutes to speak of the 90-minute debate. So Trump was terrible, and Trump turned a lot of people off. I think the ironic thing about it was that Trump fared no better But he was giving, I mean, he was just giving Biden layup after layup after layup, and Biden couldn't connect anything. It was the worst possible outcome that you could have expected for Biden. He had to come out there. He had one job, Kathy. He had to come out and disprove all the stuff about his age and just give a semi-decent performance. And just slap down Trump a couple times, and he could have walked off, and they could have, called it a victory and moved on. But he was absolutely, I've been a fan of Biden for a while. I think he's been a great president. I think he's accomplished a lot with, in the current environment, with the divisions that we have. And even I'm kind of like, wow, man, I don't know how I can defend this guy anymore. Like, I've been on the, Trump, Biden's not actually suffering from dementia, and I don't think he is, but I just think he just looks too old. I just think he's too fucking old. I don't know. But what were your thoughts on the debate? We'll get into some swapping, some Democratic parties, swap parties.
I'll tell you what I thought. From the second they showed him shuffling onto the stage, I said, fuck. Though to be fair to him a little bit, you can tell he wasn't feeling good. You could hear the frog in his throat, right? Like I kept screaming, give him a cough drop, right? Like, clear your throat, blow your nose, Joe, something like that, right? So you could tell he wasn't feeling well, but that doesn't help his case to be like, oh, I'm an old man who wasn't feeling good. Well, that doesn't help, right? Like, somebody should have given him some Sudafed before he got out there, and he could have been all like jazzed up on Sudafed and be like, fuck you, Donald Trump. That could have been fun. I think, like, as to whether or not he can do the job, like defending him, what he's been able to do up until this point, I don't think is diminished by the fact that he can't move forward necessarily.
Right.
And I don't even think that there's any reconciliation that needs to be done for people who have been defended now, because anybody who's familiar with old people enough or have seen older people kind of deteriorate in their older years. Remember, he is 81 years old. Like, my grandmother died, she was 83. So like, it is not like an out of the question like conversation to be having. Like, to live into your 80s is proof that you're wealthy, I think, if nothing else, right? But it can also like flip on a dime. Like, you can be perfectly healthy for the longest time. You get sick once and deteriorate really quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like he could have been totally fine. Like, when we were all saying, look at his State of the Union performance. He probably was totally fine.
Right.
But somewhere between then and now, and I would say that because he's in his 80s, like, to be realistic, can he do the job of president? Yeah, I think he can. Can he do the job of president while running for the job of president, which are two equally like demanding jobs? And that's where I think it got too much, because from the State of the Union, he looked fine, but he wasn't really campaigning then. Since then, he has been campaigning, and that I think you can see is taking a toll on him, especially in light of Israel and Gaza. So he's managing a war, he's running the country in tense political times, and running a contentious presidential race. That's a lot for anyone, let alone an 80-year-old, So I don't think there's a question as to whether he could finish his term, because I've heard people saying, oh, maybe he should step down. No, I think he needs to pick a job and do it. And the one he has to do is be president. The one he doesn't have to do is run for president. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
he's definitely deteriorated since the State of the Union. I mean, he doesn't look good. I can't even count to you. There were so many times during that debate where I just started shouting. I was just like, no. He looked like he hadn't prepared at all, which is like weird, because they locked him in a room for a week, and like they reportedly were practicing. He needs to fire his entire team. I don't know what the fuck happened. You could tell that like their debate strategy was to pump him full of like facts and figures and memorize all these numbers about the economy, and like, you could tell that's what tripped him up initially, is he was like reaching back to try and find this number on the economy. He couldn't remember it. He said the wrong number 3 or 4 times. He said the wrong names of people. Said he was gonna attack. He said something about like destroying Medicare or something like that. You could tell that he was trying to go through his debate prep, and he couldn't remember any of it. So about halfway through the debate, he just threw all that out, and he just started attacking Donald Trump, which is what he should have been doing. They just, they should have just let him they've taken the leash off and just let him do his thing. But instead they tried to like prep him with all this memorization shit, and he forgot it. He forgot what he was supposed to say that they told him to say, and he looked terrible. He looked terrible in the first half of the debate. Kind of recovered in the second half of the debate when he just threw the script out and just kind of was himself.
Well, there was a point where it was like, oh, the cold medicine kicked in, was what I actually thought. And I was
he
like,
did
oh, okay.
sound a little better towards the end
Yeah,
too.
like exactly. I feel like somebody gave him a cough drop at the commercial, right? Like the Dayquil kicked in or something. I think like his debate strategists plan was to contrast Trump's craziness with actual stability, which is the strategy they should use if they replace him, because that is it. But with Joe, like, you need to be quick on your feet to do that. And Joe used to be quick on his feet. 2012 Joe could do that with Paul Ryan. Okay. If you remember the way Joe Biden took that little boy to the carpet and made him clean it, right? Like it was embarrassing. Like even Paul Ryan, you could see in real time him like, can I call my mom? You're being mean. Like I feel like halfway through the 2012 VP debate, you could see Paul Ryan wanting to be like, teacher, like he just had that like pissant like look on his face. But Joe Biden's, I think, most relatable moment ever in a debate against Trump was that moment in the very, very first debate back in 2020 when he just was absolutely exacerbated with the interrupting and the nonsense, where he goes, well, you just shut up, man. And that was the minute that Donald Trump got rattled in the first debate and Joe Biden was able to finally start saying something. And had he done that in this debate, I think like he was trying to actually respond to some of the things that Donald Trump was saying, but Donald Trump wasn't saying anything to respond to. So Joe Biden was using like every bit of cognitive function he had to discern what Donald Trump just said and then try to find the policy in his brain that related to it. But it's just like, I couldn't have debated Donald Trump that way because he didn't make any sense. So had Joe Biden just come up and been like that first time around, been like, can you repeat the question? Because I have no idea what the fuck he just answered. Like, I feel like had that been the energy he
should have dropped some F-bombs. Like, just do it.
Or
like,
something. Or he could have just been like, I can't remember what we were like, or made a joke about it the way Reagan did. He goes, I know I'm an old man, but I can't remember what the question was after that fucking tirade. Or even leave that out, or that malarkey. He could have been Malarkey Joe. A little bit more malarkey would have gone a long way that night, I think. But
he should. You can't debate. He shouldn't have agreed to it. You can't debate Donald Trump because he's just gonna. The whole fucking thing was lie. He just made up shit completely on the spot. He made up shit that I hadn't even heard before. Like
because they're on their internet bubble, man.
Like immigrants want to take black jobs. Like what the fuck is he talking about? And then like that everybody wanted to get rid of Roe. That like Democrats or he's like Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Everybody agreed that Roe had to go. I was like, what the fuck? Do you actually believe the things that are like when he says stuff like that? And you could see Joe's face. Like Joe was just like, I don't like what the fuck. So now you're arguing. You have to like argue Trump's lies, and it's useless. It's not a debate. It's like it ended up just being Joe being like, he's lying. Trump lies. He's lying. It's just it was too much. And that was actually the best part of the debate because then Joe had like nothing left to lose, and he called him a loser and all this stuff. So
what it turned into was watching an old man beat a straw man, because that's what it was. He didn't get a chance to say anything because he kept having to defend what he didn't say, which is what every 10th grade English student gets taught not to do in a paper. But we watched Joe Biden fall for every fucking time that night. But it's fine. It's fine.
He gave him so many opportunities to just destroy. Like Trump was so bad. He gave Biden every fucking opportunity to destroy him, to dunk on him, and Biden could not land a blow. He could not do it. He could not. He even like he started rambling about golfing at one point, and it was like a fucking it was a gift wrapped moment where Biden could have just like destroyed him for talking about his golf game, and then Biden starts talking about his golf game. Like this was categorically one of the worst debate performances I have ever seen. We talked about the history of debates on the last show, and I got to be honest, like for what Biden had to do in that debate to the product that he produced was abysmal. That was absolutely abysmal. That will be studied. And it's not even just about him being an old man and like, the 1,000-yard stare that he has and the stumbling over his words. It was the absolute lack of preparation and the fact that he came off listen, great people are great when they need to be great. He needed to be great, and he was fucking terrible. So I don't know. It was really disappointing. It was
Well, the
just a
funniest
really
part was,
disappointing
well,
moment.
and I said this to you during the debate, is that like the no audience thing, I think, was a very bad decision across the board. Like they did it to not feed Donald Trump's ego,
Right.
but I think they fundamentally underestimated how much Joe Biden feeds off a crowd, because
He does.
literally 5 minutes
Everyone does.
after the debate, yeah, like 5 minutes after the debate, he walks in and I was like, oh, there are complete sentences. Where the fuck were you? Next time I have the debate at the Waffle House. You know what I mean? It's
You
fine.
can't
I
judge
don't
how you're
care.
doing if you don't have an audience. Like, that's the other thing is I don't even know that he knew initially that he had been bad. It was like that whole thing with Obama in
Yeah.
2012, like legendarily, like the first debate that he had with Romney. He was terrible.
Mhm.
And he
He
had
had no
no
idea.
idea. Like he got off stage and he thought he did fine, and everyone had to like sit him down and be like, Barack, that was awful. Like you sucked.
Yeah,
Like I don't
there
think
was
you
an
can
arrogance to his, though.
at that point he was arrogant. You don't without an audience, you can't judge how things are
Yeah.
going. I mean, you probably have an idea that things aren't going well, but you don't know how it looks on TV. You don't know
Yeah.
how it looks in
Well,
real time.
to that point, like, I was talking to a bunch of my kids, like, they were texting me, they're like, "Miss Cannon, this looks really bad." I'm like, "Yeah. Yeah, it does. That's fun."
Yeah.
But, to back to last week's episode when we talked about the Nixon Kennedy debate and the changing of mediums, right? About how like TV audiences and or radio audiences saw that debate very differently. One of my kids made an interesting point to me that baffled me for a couple of reasons, because it's not something I anticipated coming from a 19-year-old, right?
Okay.
She said, I watched that debate, miss, and it was bad, but I read some of the transcript of the debate, and it's like, he doesn't sound so bad. Like, when you read what he said, because he was like, the problem was we couldn't understand what he said, but when you read what he said, he knew what he was talking about. I read what Donald
Yeah.
Trump said, and it's just a bunch of ands and thes and like half a sentence here. And I was like, that is remarkable, right? So
Yeah.
if you read the debate, there's a clear winner, and it's Joe Biden. If you watch the debate, there's a clear winner, and it's Donald Trump. And how strange is that, right? That it's the
Yeah.
young audience that doesn't want to watch these two old men, so they went to read the transcript. Like the kids went to read. Well, all right, I want the takeaway to this. The kids read the transcript of the debate. They read the
They're going to
words.
single-handedly revive like print media because they don't want to watch, it.
Because they can't stand watching old men lie to them anymore, right? So, and I just thought that was really interesting. And I was like, wow, like that's one, it's really telling to their ability to find different sources of information that they can trust, right? Because like they see the clips, but they live in a world where AI is so like common that they don't trust anything. So they go looking for verification like on their own. And they're like, yeah, I read it and it wasn't so bad. And two, they have, I don't know if you've seen this trend on TikTok, but somebody has pointed this out to me. But the new Gen Z reaction to the debate is to make gay ship videos of Joe Biden and Donald Trump to Chappelle Rowan songs. And that
No,
is
I have not seen that.
not something I saw coming. And I think I said that name right. Chappelle Rowan, is that how I say it? I don't even know, because I'm not cool and I don't listen to cool music. But like, it's not something I had on a bingo card. Let's put it that way. But it is definitely a way of coping with the, fundamental end of democracy as we know it. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Somebody farted in the debate. It was probably Trump because he was speaking. His mic was on. You can definitely hear a fart at one point, but between the two
I
old
didn't
men,
notice.
you knew that was going to happen at some point.
It was such a shit show. Who would have known? Get it.
Like I've had it with I don't know if it's the team or if it's by like I've just had it. This dude has been in politics for so long. He used to have like a really razor sharp tongue. Like 90s Biden would have fucking torn your head off. Like he would have
90s Biden was it,
destroyed
man.
Donald Trump. But
Like
for
I
the
said,
last
2012 Biden had it. 2016 Biden had it.
which is so sad to say, but in this century, Biden has just been gaffe machine. He says stupid things constantly. It's like you've had so much time to practice and get better, and you have not gotten better, and it's just you're getting worse. So
Well, I
I don't
mean,
know.
he's
It's
at the stage in his life of diminishing returns, but I wouldn't even
yeah,
say it's been that long. Like I said, 2012 Biden, like
yeah. He was good. He
washed
was
the
good against Paul
floor with
Ryan.
Paul Ryan. I think even 2016 had it not been for Bo dying and had he actually run as Obama's heir apparent, like we'd all honestly thought so and hoped so.
Yeah,
That version of Joe Biden would have beat Donald Trump in 2016.
yeah.
that Joe Biden could have taken him on all sassy. But I think like the between his son dying and the pandemic and Hunter relapsing and all of, I think that's just a lot for an old man to go through.
Yeah.
And then still serve as president. And he's done a good job. And the thing that where I'm at now is I wouldn't want to see his failure to be reelected destroy the legacy that he should have from his presidency, because he's had a very effective presidency, and he could be remembered for that, or he could be remembered as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? Hubris held on too long and destroyed America. I don't know. I just work here.
So okay, so the debate happened. It is what it is. Last week, calls for Biden. Now, officially, just a lot of calls now within the party for Biden to step aside, endorse somebody else. I don't even know if we want to even get into that. We can talk broker convention another time. Like he would have to release his delegates, and I think they would have to do it would have to be on like a second ballot. I think they would even have to like nominate him on the first ballot. He'd have to like reject the nomination, and then they would do a second. I think that's how it works. We can discuss that on a different.
Yeah, I think like, well, I like for everybody who cares, like for our patrons, we're going to do a deep dive on that a little bit probably next week as well, where I can include some of that. But I want to do more research on it because I think it'll work the way you're doing it, unless it's Kamala Harris, because technically it was Biden and Harris that earned those delegates. And in the absence of Biden, Harris can still accept the delegates, but I'm not positive, and I don't want to like commit to that officially. So
that might be true. If it's anybody but Kamala, he may have to release the delegates, but the delegates might be implied to have also be supporting Kamala on the ticket. I don't know.
It's the ticket. Yeah. So that is what I wanted to like double check before I went into it. But boy, could we have some fun with that. So
it's been going back and forth. Basically, the gist is that, you know, Biden's got to really hit it out of the park over the next couple of weeks, or he's basically done. He's got and it's not looking good, Cathy. I will say that right now. He's again, I don't know what the fuck is going on with this guy. He looks like he's an amateur, or his team just really sucks.
An old man who's deteriorating.
They've decided that at least the initial response has been to schedule him for these protected, in the bubble, sheltered events. Like he's doing a recorded interview on ABC that's coming out on Thursday. He hasn't talked to any reporters since the debate. They're having these really awkward campaign phone calls where the leadership of the campaign is basically telling all the staff to just shut the fuck up and bury their head in the sand and don't ask questions. So it's just the response has not been good. He came out today and said that he is definitely staying in the race. They're trying to invent this slogan of like, when I get knocked down, I get back up again. Like if Chumbawamba is your campaign anthem, that's not a good sign.
I get knocked down, but I get up again.
It's going really bad. It's going really bad. If he's going to really come back and salvage this thing, he needs to come out and do what he should have done in the debate. He needs to take live questions, no teleprompters, and he needs to knock it out of the fucking park. And the fact that they don't trust him to do that is it's not going well. So I don't know what are we on here, Cannon? Are we on team swap, team marriage swap, or are we on team monogamy here with Joe Biden? Where are you at? This is so like, there is such an argument to be made for not switching the president like right now. It's such a if it were any other situation, it would be fucking insane. So I don't know. What team are you on right now?
But what I would say is it's not any other situation. It's this one. And we are in unique times, and sometimes unique times call for unique actions. And here's what I want to be clear. I'm going to vote for whoever the Democrats put up there. I don't give a shit. I remember saying I would vote for a potato. And at this point, it is potato versus Trump. And I will vote for potato. Like I remember
it might literally be a potato versus
It might literally be potato Harris versus Trump. And I'm voting potato Harris. But I also remember like when I was a kid, like hearing stories about how the dead candidate would win an election. And I'd be like, how bad you got to be to lose to a dead guy. Joe Biden could die between now and November 5th, and I will vote for Joe Biden. I would vote for a dead Joe Biden over Donald Trump. I want the world to be clear. That said, I don't think I should have to vote for a potato. I think there are, and I think to your point, he should be out here doing all of those things, and he's not, and his campaign is not unaware that he should be doing those things,
Yeah.
and there's a reason he's not, and I think that's very telling in and of itself. He's come out and said, of course I'm staying in the race. He has to do that, because if he starts showing weakness, the panic that has already set in will get worse, right? He's not going to admit he's stepping down until, and I hate to use these words because we all know everybody hates them, until a Democratic establishment is behind a new
Mhm.
ticket. And it'll be Harris, because it kind of has to be for a lot of reasons. And I remember, like, initially, because again, the fucking fascism was on the march, I was scared that, like, you put a scary lawyer on the campaign trail and it'll scare people. But then I told Troy earlier, and we'll unpack this later in another episode, that, like, a scary lawyer is exactly what unnerves Donald Trump right now. So perhaps it's a great idea. And then you just need a nice Southern white boy to wander around with her. Like, she married one, so she knows too.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps that's where Clinton went wrong. Like, she knew she needed a vanilla white boy, but she picked Tim Kaine. Like, I think
Ugh.
had Hillary Clinton picked, I don't know, not Tim Kaine,
Yeah.
just not Tim Kaine.
That was pretty bad.
But I think a good VP, a nice, Southern Democrat white boy to settle all of the moderate Democrats down, that is palatable to Pennsylvania, let's be real, and put a few swing states in play. Not that VPs tends to do that, but in this case, with the margins that we have, I saw it on or on Twitter. I'll tell, like, the podcast, like I told Troy, Kamala and a cracker. Let's do it.
Kamala and cracker.
I think it
That's
needs to
pretty
be a real discussion. And like I said, at any other time, do you want to, surrender the incumbency advantage? No, but in this case, you kind of wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And because that was kind of the issue in 68, is it was like when Lyndon Johnson stepped down, had it not been a contentious Democratic primary, it would have been fine. But it was because it was a contentious Democratic primary, which might have been why they did it the way they did it this time, is that they didn't want a contentious Democratic primary with an incumbent not running. So maybe it was, and they didn't want a situation where the Democratic Party rejects the VP. So maybe this was once again the DNC doing what the DNC has done for, I don't know, 100 or so years, and ensuring that their VP would get the nominee and could pick somebody palatable. I don't know. I just know that Harris polls better against Donald Trump right now. I saw one poll that, like, put Michelle Obama at a 50% over Trump's 39%. And I was like, that is telling right there. Like, she has shown no interest and she would win. That's how desperate we are.
Michelle Obama's not going to run. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Like I said, I think that Biden's legacy has been really good. I think he's had a really, really successful 4 years. I think if he decides to run, we have to get behind him, and that's his call to make. We have to beat Donald Trump no matter what. So we can't have a broker party. And I think most people realize that. But I think with the amount of talent that the Democrats have,
that's the other thing. We have a lot of talent.
And like Newsom, Bashir, Gretchen Whitmer, Pete Buttigieg, Roy Cooper, Jared Polis. I mean, the list just goes. Ossoff, Warnock, your boyfriend John Ossoff. I mean,
He's so pretty, Troy.
The list just goes on and on and on and on and on, and not to mention, Kamala Harris. I think, in Kamala Harris, you have an exciting. You bring excitement back into it. It's no longer about the two old farty white guys just lying to everybody. It's you bring a younger, more vitality to the ticket. You bring more progressive candidate to the ticket in Kamala Harris. Obviously, a woman of color. I think that alone is a 10-point right there. People just get excited about having a woman of color running for president.
Well, the disaffected Black voters would come right back, and a Black woman being on the ticket would get every Black mama in the world to drag her little boy to the polls. Because
I think people don't understand how popular Kamala Harris is with Black voters. I think people don't understand how popular she's a very, very underrated politician. She's actually quite popular with a lot of segments She's much more popular than Joe is with the youth. If she was white, if she was the same person but she was white, she would be the most popular female politician in the country. It's just
Isn't that sad?
There's a racism factor at play there. But I think Kamala, if you take the shackles off her and she's no longer in the number 2 seat, but she's driving the bus there, I think she would be excellent. I think she would have destroyed Trump. To your point, like the prosecutor thing, I think she would have destroyed Trump in that debate. She would have put him on trial. I think
part of me is heartbroken though, because I've always wanted to see her on the Supreme Court. Because
she'll get there eventually.
I guess, but if she's president, like who is she? Freaking Hugo Black? Not Hugo Black. Who was the guy? I can't remember. But no, I think you're right. Like I think she's underestimated, even by me, and I'll own that. Like even I underestimate her sometimes because I live in Florida and I hear a lot of gross things, and those gross things tend to scare me, and I'm very scared of fascism. So I'll even own it. Like my initial reaction was, I like her, but I'm like, I don't want to roll the dice, like I'm scared. But like the more I sat with it and the more I thought with it, like Donald Trump hates every black prosecutor that he's had to deal with. And there have been quite a few.
Especially the black female prosecutors.
I was going to say, and like throw another one at him and he's going to lose his shit, right? He won't be able to escape strong black women asking him hard questions. He'll have Fani Willis in Georgia. He'll have Chutkan in the DC case. Then he's going to have Kamala everywhere he goes. Like he will unravel.
After the way he and his campaign have been treating Fani Willis, to have Kamala up there, you're going to have black women just salivating, just absolutely salivating.
You'll have Kamala Harris on a stage, look him in the eye and call him on it, and he's a coward. He'll say those things to a crowd filled of people who scream and love him, but will he be able to look Kamala Harris in the eye? No, he does not.
He's probably terrified of her.
He is. Because he was scared of Hillary Clinton, but he's probably beaten enough of his wives to not be as scared of a white woman as he is a black woman. But like,
I think I think you're right, Kamala and the Cracker. I think you counter whatever they're going to say about her being like a California liberal or whatever, coastal elite or whatever the fuck they're going to say. You counter that by putting Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky, on there, or someone else from the South. Or Midwest.
Say Roy Cooper from North Carolina. He's term limited, so he can't do anything else.
It can't be Gavin because they're both from California.
Right.
So it wouldn't be Gavin, but it could be Gretchen Whitmer, Roy Cooper, Andy Beshear, any one of these others, any other governors. And by the way, the governors are having like governors only phone calls. Not even their staff is allowed. Everybody's just kind of scrambling. But I think so. We should do.
Those are the things I think that are pointing to we're going to see a replacement. Like that's.
Well, I think you're right. I think Biden is not going to come out and say he's done until all of the pieces are in place. I mean, he's not going to. This is politician speak. He's going to come out 100% until the very moment that he announces. And I think it would be great for him and his legacy if it's Kamala, where he sort of stays on the team as like her advisor. Maybe even he's like her foreign policy advisor, because that's where she would probably be the weakest, is like not having much foreign policy experience. But I think to have him stay on as like a old grandpa advisor to the to another president, I think that would solidify his legacy. But I got, like I say, I'm on Team Biden if he stays in, but if not, I think I'm on that Kamala Beshear train. But maybe we should. So we'll do a Patreon episode. We'll make our case for our candidates, our swap candidates. Is that what you want to do?
And just deep into these arguments more, because like there's like in like how the DNC would go about doing it. Like there's a lot of logistics involved in the politics to it. So like I've been doing the immunity deep dive, right? So I only have notes on the brokered convention swap, because one nightmare at a time, guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But for sure, that is definitely something I think we should unpack.
And then cataloging the attacks that they could come at her with, like, okay, one, the biggest thing that they're not going to be able to help themselves with is that she's some sort of like slut and slept her way to the top. They're already trying to hit her with that. And I can't wait for them to try that attack and watch it blow up in their face with women who are going to be absolutely infuriated that they're trying to say that she got where she was, but not because of her talent, but because she slept around.
Well, the last time they tried that, she became the vice president. So let them. I say let them. But anyway, moving on to the star of the day, Troy.
So Trump, SCOTUS ruling that Trump's, as president, official acts as president cannot be prosecuted. It has partial immunity. Official acts, so basically kicking the can down the road as to what that means. They didn't really specify it as to what official acts means, but now they've sort of left it up to themselves to say what official acts mean. So it's kind of interesting, but just horrifying day for democracy. Horrifying Nixon's ghost coming back. But let's get into a deep dive with Cathy here on the immunity history. And
Trump versus the United States.
Trump versus the United States.
And why all this conversation of Kamala Harris matters so much. Okay, that's what I should have titled today's episode. Like, why we were talking about Kamala for 20 minutes, because we're gonna talk immunity and deep dives. All right, so I want to go back in time to
U.S. versus Nixon.
So where it all began.
So we have another PowerPoint. I'm gonna try to link this in the show notes if people want to see it. But I don't think.
Or just watch us on YouTube, because that makes me feel popular. When I show up on my own algorithm on the YouTube, I'm like, oh look, it's me. That's fun for me, guys.
On the YouTubes. All right, go ahead, Cathy.
All right, so 250 years of American history, and it wasn't until 50 years ago we had to ask the question: do presidents have to follow the law? So it's an odd reality to me that's every now and again we get these Republicans that think laws don't apply to them. It's fine, whatever. But as a quick refresher, it's always fucking Republicans. And I want to say this, like, most of the source material I got on like court cases, like backgrounds and rulings and stuff, I got from a website called oyes.com. I think it was .com or .org. Hold on, I'm going to look really quick. I use this in my class all the time. It's ozeg.org. So oyez.org.
Oh, okay.
And it is basically a database of every Supreme Court case ever. Like a syllabus of like the schedule as to when it was filed, when it was ruled in district court, everything. You can listen to the oral arguments. You can get like the question, the whole thing. It's a fantastic resource for any Supreme Court case that you need quick questions answered on, and like a jumping point to do further research, right? So my kids have benefited from this resource, so I think all of you should as well. And it is where I got all of the opinions and rulings from for this PowerPoint presentation.
Cool.
So
love it.
Nixon, U.S. versus Nixon, 1972, to refresh your memories, was Nixon claiming executive privilege for holding on to the recordings he made in the Oval Office with respect to the Watergate break-in. And in this case, the court basically said, no, sir, you're not allowed to claim executive privilege in the commission of a crime. Right? Like executive privilege isn't so broad that you don't have to do this. You are being investigated. Separation of powers. Congress has a right to conduct oversight. Give the fucking tapes over, basically. And it was a unanimous decision. Okay. And it was shortly after this unanimous decision that Nixon realized he had to quit his job. So I think I got the year wrong here. I think it was actually 1974 on the PowerPoint. So I might fix that in a second. So that was basically it. So the precedent was basically that the president is not above the law. That was established right then and there. And it pissed Richard Nixon off. Okay. So do you think we're done with Richard Nixon? No, we are not. Because while Watergate was going on, Richard Nixon was involved in a bunch of other fucked up things, because sort of what got the ball rolling on Watergate, if you recall, was the Pentagon Papers when they all came out. And the Pentagon Papers is what sort of kicked off whistleblowers in the executive branch and like holding the executive branch accountable and all of those things. And Nixon had this habit of firing anyone who criticized him. Okay, this will come back up again a couple times throughout this presentation. FY fucking I. Okay. So in 1968, there was a civil contractor, this Fitzgerald guy. I can't remember his first name right now. But basically, he testified before Congress. He was called before Congress to investigate some, fuckery, let's say, happening in Civil Service Commission with respect to funding and the production of planes. It was what was it? A C I had it in here somewhere. I can't find it now. A specific type of plane that I don't think matters. But basically, there were safety measures that were being cut. Like, we were cutting corners on safety and things were getting overcharged and money wasn't accounted for. What? How confusing is this? Because that never happens in Republican politics. No one's ever fucky and, rule breaky at all. Also, look at this poor guy. Like, he had to look like those glasses that people wore in the 80s. Like, why? Just, the birth control glasses.
Tragic time.
Yeah, it's like, for anyone who can't see the screen, it's the birth control glasses. It's like, it looks like a birth control palette, like on your face, attached to here. That's what we call them. They're birth control glasses. They have a name for those of us who've worn glasses our whole lives. Plus, nobody would sleep with you with those glasses.
Basically they are birth control because no one would sleep with you.
Get it. Fun stuff. So essentially, the court in this case kind of clarified some shit on immunity. Like, okay, we get your points, right? That you can't be held accountable for the things you do as part of the office. So like the napalm in Vietnam, okay, right? We can't charge you for that. That's an official act, Mr. Nixon. But like, you're not like free from civil litigation. Okay. Like,
right.
You can be held accountable, and that becomes important because, Bill Clinton is a thing. So
this whole thing is just about like, because occasionally the president has to commit a war crime and like, we don't want to prosecute our presidents for war crime. Like, let's just call it what it is. It's just because occasionally presidents have to drop some fucking napalm. And I'm just saying there are ways to deal with that without making a president a king and above the law.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm gonna actually read out what I got from OYES here on the Nixon Fitzgerald case, so you guys can like hear their arguments. The question of the case was the president immune from prosecution in a civil suit? Can he be sued in civil court, essentially?
Okay.
Right? And in a 5-4 ruling that was written by Justice Lewis F. Powell Jr., keep that name in mind, kids, for no particular reason whatsoever.
Birth control glasses.
No. He comes up later. This is the point. The court said, quote, yes, the court held that the president is entitled to absolute immunity from damages and liability predicated on his official acts. However, this sweeping immunity was is a function of the president's unique office, rooted in its constitutional tradition of separation of powers and supported by history. However, the president is not necessarily immune from criminal charges stemming from his official or unofficial acts, but he does have immunity that extends to all acts within the outer perimeter. Okay. So if he does something illegal, like, say, orchestrate the break-in of the Democratic National Committee, that doesn't count as immunity. But if he, like, I don't know, napalmed Cambodia, you get the point there. Was it fucked up? Yeah, a little bit. But the idea is that, no, you can't charge the presidents for the crimes of the United States, but you can charge the presidents for the crimes of himself. So Richard Nixon committing crimes on behalf of the U.S. government, totally cool. Richard Nixon using the U.S. government to commit crimes, not cool.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's a fair distinction, I think.
Didn't they also, was it one of the impeachment articles bombing Cambodia? They wanted to impeach him for bombing Cambodia too. And they're like, that's not going to fly because the president's commander in chief. Like, you can't.
I think it was one of the things that was like tossed around. I don't think it that one wouldn't have like made it into the article as an impeachment. I don't think. But yeah, there were plenty of people pissed about Vietnam that probably would have wanted to try something like that. So that was where we were into 1992 or 1982, which is the Reagan era. Okay. So, once we get to Ronald Reagan, I'm going to start getting that tone in my voice that we all know. So those of you watching at home, you can see that fucker on my screen. And you can see in this case that there's two fuckers on the screen, because there's not only Ronald Reagan, but there's that child molester looking fuck next to him. And tell me I'm not wrong, Troy. Did I describe him as a child molester looking fuck? Is that an accurate description of Robert Bork?
This is Bork. Bork is the creepiest looking motherfucker I've ever seen in my entire life.
Creepiest looking motherfucker.
What the hell is going on with this guy?
Yeah, just listening at home, just really quick, Google Robert Bork, B-O-R-K, and child molester looking motherfucker. I am correct. Okay. So Ronald Reagan appointed him to the court in 1987, and his nomination kicked off the fight for the Supreme Court ever since. Because in the aftermath of Watergate and in the aftergate of US v. Nixon and the aftermath of Nixon versus Fitzgerald, Roger Stone has done a million interviews where he talks about this, where Republicans basically wanted to ensure Watergate could never happen to them again.
Right.
Okay, they're very clearly on record as saying that they think Watergate was unfair to Republicans and unfairly characterized them forever. And they have been playing the victim ever since. So in 1987, Robert Bork was nominated to the court, and Robert Bork is gross. And to introduce to you the depravity of Robert Bork, I'm going to read to you what Ted Kennedy had to say about him. And Ted Kennedy is also the guy that let a lady drown in a car because he was drunk. Okay, so not exactly a bastion of humanity. And his opinions on Robert Bork are, quote, Robert Bork's America is a land in which women would be forced into back alley abortions, blacks would sit at segregated lunch counters, rogue police could break down citizens' doors at midnight raids, and school children could not be taught about evolution, writers and artists would be censored at the whim of the government, and the doors of the federal courts would be shut on the fingers of millions of citizens, end quote. Does that sound like Florida to anyone?
Yeah, I was like, that's we're living in Robert Bork's America? Is that
because
the takeaway?
Because that's what they wanted him on the court to do. Democrats successfully blocked his nomination, turned people against these ideologies, and that is where the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society declared war and decided to take over the courts. How Clarence Thomas got on the court was because they cried foul. Oh, you're going to bork him again? And borking became a verb, but it's fine. In this PowerPoint presentation,
borking is not fun. It's very painful. Just to clarify.
God. A little link here to rulings of SCOTUS that Bork said were wrong. You can go to that link if you want to, but to just sum it up for you, every civil rights case ever, he spoke out very publicly and very loudly against the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act, declared in his nomination hearing to Joe Biden and the Judiciary Committee that Brown versus Board of Education was ruled incorrectly and should be overturned. He sat in his Judiciary Committee hearings in 1987 in the era of busing and school integration and said, yeah, Brown was wrong. Put me on the Supreme Court. God, I can't imagine why Democrats voted against him.
Well, yeah, he didn't make it. What was the just quickly? What was the good parts of Bork? I mean, it's kind of a stupid question because it's Reagan, but like, what was Reagan hoping to achieve with this nomination? Like, was Bork like a well-respected guy or something? Like, what? Why the fuck would Reagan put this guy's name forward if he was he's basically just an extremist? In the day, he was an extremist. Now he would just be a Republican. But.
Yep. And this is, but to answer that question, I need you to remember the name I told you to remember earlier, right? So who was Robert Bork and why was he important? He was the replacement nominee for Lewis Powell Jr.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Who had written the majority opinion in Nixon versus Fitzgerald. And he was due to be nominated to the court because Nixon had promised to appoint Robert Bork to the Supreme Court all the way back in the 1970s when he was the only person that agreed to fire Archibald Cox during the Saturday Night Massacre.
Yeah. Okay.
So after half the Justice Department resigned in anger because Nixon was a criminal, Robert Bork said, I'll be a criminal, sir. And he said, cool, I'll put you on the court one day. Yeah, this would be the equivalent of Donald Trump rewarding Aileen Cannon with the Supreme Court seat for successfully delaying the documents case, which she's doing, which is 100% what they're doing, right? But Bork never got put on the court by Nixon because, you know, Bork's actions helped him get kicked out of office, essentially. Then Ford nominated John Paul Stevens. He took the place of Rehnquist. Then I can't remember who resigned, but then Rehnquist got moved up to Chief Justice of the court, and that's when Scalia got nominated onto the court by Reagan first. So you can see that the flavor of Republican judges has been like this for a long time. Okay.
God, Reagan was such a piece of shit. Oh, anyway.
Reagan was such a piece of shit, right? Such a piece of shit. So that is kind of how all of that happened. So that's where
I
he
knew
came
that
from.
and I forgot it. That's just so fucking gross. Oh my God.
Yep. And there's other stuff that he didn't like. Like he thought that he didn't like the way liberty was defined by the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
He thought racial equality meant that moving forward, we don't need to do anything to mitigate any damages of previously existing inequalities. Equality doesn't mean fixing previous inequality, I think was one of his quotes. He also didn't want gender equality or sex equality, right? It was racial equality. Sorry, ladies. He was one of them. Okay. So needless to say, his hearings were gross. They were televised. Joe Biden was the chair of the Judiciary Committee at the time. And this is a little bit, again, why Republicans hate Joe Biden, because when it comes to Joe Biden in the court, there's a history. You know what I mean? He chaired the Judiciary Committee for 30 some odd years, you know?
Jesus.
But anyway, Robert Bork's nomination never made it out of the Judiciary Committee. It was voted down 9-4. Fucking crazy. And the Republicans cried foul. And this is where, keep in mind, the 1980s, this is where like the moral majority, like all the Christian right organizations were showing up. So this is also where the Heritage Foundation and FedSoc came together, and they're like, let's take over the courts, right?
This was like the last straw. And it just so happened to be Biden.
Fucking, well, he's been there for fucking ever, right? So when Clarence Thomas was nominated, the contentious hearings around Thomas, they just kept bringing up in the media, like, oh, they're just doing to Clarence Thomas what they're doing to Robert Bork now. But now they added racism on top of it, right? So, oh, they don't like him because he's black. They don't like him because he's a black conservative. They're just doing what they did to Robert Bork, right? Forever the victims are the Republicans. And that is kind of why, like, Joe Biden will talk about this sometimes when you ask him, like, his role in the Thomas hearings is he admitted it. He's like, I fell right into the trap of I didn't want to get caught up in like looking political, and I ended up making a political decision to not look political, right? And I'll give it to Republicans when it comes to manipulating people. Boy, are they good. But they also are good at taking a loss and turning it into a victory, because Nixon Fitzgerald left the door open to civilly charge presidents with crimes, which will bring us to Clinton versus Jones, 1997.
Clarence Thomas never got over how he was treated in those hearings by the Democrats. He's decided to make it his sticking point for the rest of his life. Bringing up pubic hairs on Coke cans.
But to be fair, every Republican is still pissed about it, right? So, quick background on Clinton versus Jones, 1997. This stemmed from a sexual harassment charge from Paula Jones against Bill Clinton when he was governor of Arkansas. A congressional investigation, a special counsel investigation, sorry. The Starr report, for those who don't know, was opened. And this actually opened the door for what eventually became the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And fun fact, Brett Kavanaugh was one of the attorneys that worked on this case.
It's all
holding a president civilly liable was Brett Kavanaugh's like cutting of his political teeth. So he started his career by arguing that presidents needed to be held accountable to the law for their actions. And he just joined the majority saying, nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Just pointing that out to anybody who missed the glaring hypocrisy of that.
Just for the guy that appointed him.
Just for the guy that appointed him. Brett Kavanaugh was also, was it Brett Kavanaugh? No, it was John Roberts that had worked on Bush versus Gore. So did Amy Coney Barrett, I believe. Anyway, sorry. We can unpack the corruption of SCOTUS another day, but Jesus Christ.
It's pretty gross.
Like, when I tell you Jesus fucking Christ, right? So that's Clinton Jones. That's where that came from. I don't know if I had moved to that slide or not. I was going back and forth.
With Kenneth Starr.
Kenneth Starr, Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah. Starr with 2 R's for anybody who wants to Google at home and look it up. The Starr report, Starr, Kenneth Starr, and Paula Jones. And that's the 90s, man. If you want 90s politics summed up.
The memes that Clinton paid the however many millions to Paula Jones over a settlement. How come he wasn't prosecuted? That was a settlement. That's not the same thing as Trump with Stormy Daniels paying hush money and lying about it and falsifying business records. That was a legal settlement. It wasn't. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He was sued, and it was a settlement to the lawsuit.
Yeah, what that is when Donald Trump pays E. Jean Carroll $84 million. That's what what Bill Clinton did with Paula Jones.
That's the equivalent. Yeah,
that's where it's the same, guys. So all that brings us to Trump versus the United States.
Oh boy.
Yep.
Here we go.
I've been talking for a long time, so I just want to give everybody a bit of a warning here that like there's a lot more to come. So we're going to devolve into like a straight up history lesson here in a minute. And I think that'll probably be something we put on Patreon. So I'll take you through Trump v. US, give you a little bit of background, and then we'll go for patrons and I'll go through the fucking founding documents that support the case. All right. So, but Trump versus the United States is an interesting case. And the actual facts of the case, if you don't know, and again, I took this from Yes, so I'm just going to read it for clarity so I don't screw it up. And a quote starting here. So former President Donald Trump was indicted in August of 2023 on 4 counts arising from special counsel Jeff Smith's investigation into the January 6, 2021 attacks on the U.S. Capitol. Trump claims that he cannot be prosecuted for his official acts as president and that a former president cannot be prosecuted unless he has first been impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate. Now, end quote. So forget the fact that he had argued a million times that because he wasn't impeached, he shouldn't be held accountable, right? That whatever. You know what? That's, again, another unpacking.
It's a stupid argument.
But anyhow, to continue, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan initially set Trump's trial date for March 4th, 2024, but later vacated the state pending resolution of Trump's immunity claims. Judge Chutkan denied Trump's motion to dismiss on immunity grounds, and Smith asked the Supreme Court directly to expedite the review and bypass the decision by the U.S. District. The court declined, deferring instead to the district's judgment. On February 6th, the D.C. Circuit upheld Chutkan's decision, and Trump requested a stay and an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's basically what that was. Mm-hmm. The majority opinion sort of sided with Donald Trump, but also sort of gave the Supreme Court ultimate power.
Yeah, they kicked the can down the road to themselves.
Well, I mean, I don't even want to say it as kicking the can down the road. I want to take it as seizing ultimate authority from the U.S. government. Okay. And I want to frame it that way very intentionally, which is why for those of you at home, I don't have the words from the majority opinion on the screen right now. I have Federalist 69. So 69, laugh all you want. But this is the Federalist paper where Alexander Hamilton basically promised that the president wouldn't be a monarch.
Even though he was kind of a monarchist, but yeah.
Well, and the reason he said he wouldn't be is because with a system of checks and balances in place and a system of judicial review, the president cannot be a king unless he had ultimate control of the judiciary.
Right.
So about that, Alex, it's fine. He's getting.
It has to be an independent judiciary that doesn't want to give the president immunity. That's not what we have.
Yes, and to just as a preview of what the deep dive will be about that too, I'm going to go through like the Federalist Papers in the court and where all that came from to give you an idea, right? But in the majority opinion, what they also did was they quoted Washington's farewell address, okay? But only part of it, not the whole part of it. And did they misrepresent Washington's farewell address? Yes. So in the middle of getting his ass kicked in the bar, he's defending his daddy, Mr. Hamilton, all right? Because we know he had daddy issues and loved George Washington. So let's just be real. He called him daddy. So the part of the farewell address that appeared in the majority opinion. Let me have this, Troy. So from the majority opinion, quote, George Washington warned against the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities. And they used this to kind of like make the claim.
That's the one they quoted.
Yeah, that's the one they quoted. To kind of like, tilt a hat to Donald Trump's claims of political prosecutions, right? That like you don't want presidents, like, and everything he's been saying on the campaign trail, that like presidents, if they could be charged with crimes, would face endless charges from political parties like trying to tear politics apart, right? So they took this part of Washington's farewell address to kind of give Donald Trump his due. I'm going to read the rest of it for you. Okay, so I'm going to reread the beginning.
That's shocking.
Oh,
that is absolutely shocking.
Right? So I'm going to read the whole thing now, start to finish. Quote, the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual. And sooner or later, the chief of some prevailing faction, or more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. So there it is on the screen now. Sorry, I was reading it. The point is that the literal part of Washington's farewell address that they tried to use is the literal part of Washington's farewell address that disagrees with their ruling in this case, right? His farewell address literally warned against what they're doing, and they're using the same words that he used to not let this happen to defend this happening. It makes me want to set them on fire.
It's very Orwellian. It's kind of sick.
It's so much like basically what he's saying is like you can't just throw away his farewell address. The point of it, remember, is that the country needs to exist beyond me. I am not America. America is bigger than me, and nobody should rally behind one person for one person's ends, because then the country ends with that person. And what the Supreme Court basically just said was, no, the president should be able to do what he wants, but ultimately we'll decide if what he's doing is okay, and we'll obviously get to decide based on whether or not we agree with him or not. Which brings us to Federalist 78. Okay, so the two things that I'm going to talk about in the deep dive, which I'll kind of give everybody a little bit of a rundown on, is kind of how the courts were supposed to be set up and some of the fears the anti-federalists had about it, right? And so for those of you who are following along with the presentation, I have a few more quotes from Washington's farewell address, just kind of in his words, showing you kind of like the kind of takeaway here is that the country isn't supposed to be about allegiance to a person. It's not supposed to be about allegiance to a party. It's not supposed to be about punishing people we disagree with. It's supposed to be about being committed to ideals that are bigger than us, right? Like one of the quotes I have here is, without looking forward to an extremity of this kind, which nevertheless ought not to be the entirety out of sight, the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it in the interest and duty of wise people to discourage and restrain it. So partisanship, perverting politics, is the only thing Washington warned us against, essentially. And partisanship has corrupted not just our politics, but our judiciary. And that is why Alexander Hamilton deserves to get punched in his goddamn face. Okay,
I blame Mitch McConnell.
Face. That too, his too, but he doesn't have a pretty face. So Federalist 78, though, was where Hamilton basically wrote about what judicial review is, why the judiciary needed to be independent, why lifetime appointments were important, and all of that stuff. But Brutus, one of the anti-federalists, and there's a couple more Federalist papers I'll go over in the deep dive that you can kind of look to here. But and we'll go through Brutus 15 a little bit, but his fear was that a federal court would basically nullify the rights of the people. And I'm pretty sure we can look at Robert Yates and his writings with a little bit better of an understanding than we did before. But a few things that I found interesting was that Coney Barrett joined the majority, but wrote a concurring opinion.
Okay.
And in her concurring opinion, I don't know if you caught it, but she's very much like season 3 Serena Waterford right now, realizing that she might have fucked up being on this team. Like that little boy, like, maybe let me try something real here. Like season 3, I think, is where Serena was first like, maybe girls should read. So they cut her finger off. So I think Amy Coney Barrett here is a little bit like, maybe girls should read. Because in her concurring, she kind of agreed with the immunity about official acts and non-official acts, but she said very clearly Trump's plan about the slate of electors, for example, would not be an official duty and therefore would not be protected with immunity. So the Supreme Court has said your fake elector scheme was wrong. And I feel like that was her like blink twice for help, Amy, right? Like her screaming in all neon letters, Jack, charge him with this, right? Like point charges here, right? Like that's what I took her concurring opinion to be, which I thought was really interesting.
Just slipping notes under the table to Jack Smith.
Yeah, basically like like, do you like me? Yes or no? Charge for slate of electors? Yes. But the best, I think, is the dissenting opinion from Sonia Sotomayor with fear for our democracy. I dissent. And I put her, I stole her Instagram post here, put it up here for everybody to read at home. I'm going to see if I can make it big enough to read myself because I'm an old person now and my eyes aren't what they were. But it says from her dissent, the president is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune, immune, immune. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. Like, fuck yes. Like, I love her. But yeah,
their
so
cocktail
that's where
parties
we're
are getting very awkward. The SCOTUS, they hang out together. It's got to be a little
yeah, so that's kind of where we are, right? Like a lot of people's reaction to this has been like fear. This with Chevron as well, with the two cases together. It's basically laying the groundwork for everything Project 2025 says it wants to do. But we're all like, don't worry, they can't do that. Well, they can now. Okay, like they literally
just
now.
paving the way for this political program that the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society are like cooking up. It's like, and these are their judges. Like, this is fucking horrifying.
Yep. And I phrased it in a very specific way on TikTok, and I'll say it again here. They did what they were paid to do.
Mm-hmm.
They did exactly what they were paid to do, which will become relevant because when we go through the Federalist Papers in a minute, judicial compensation was brought up a couple times, and I guarantee you private boats and yacht trips and stuff were not on the list of compensation.
We're in the middle of a right-wing revolution, and it's they've taken over. They've infiltrated the Supreme Court. And,
yeah, like Mitch McConnell holding that seat open and Donald Trump winning was like freaking the Battle of Gettysburg for them. Pivotal turning point in the war, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so
do you want to do
the long and short of it? So
do you want to do the rest on for the patrons?
Yeah, because otherwise I'll be talking for another 30 minutes.
All right. There are 30 minutes left of this presentation. If you want to hear the rest of it, and it gets even more intense, you got to head on over to Patreon and subscribe. Patreon.com/justbuylesscoffee. Subscribe $5 a month. Get access to the rest of this deep dive with Cathy, plus a lot of other content, pre-show stuff that doesn't make it on the regular show, exclusive guest interviews, etc. If you want to get more in depth with us, head on over to patreon.com/justbuylesscoffee. We're going to end it here and kick over to the Patreon exclusive part. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And with fear for our democracy, I guess we'll sign off. We'll see everybody
next time.
Next time. You've been listening to Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics, featuring Troy Matthews at Keep Troy Blue and Cathy Cannon at Cannon's Fodder. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X. All opinions are our own.